Welcome to the Magic After Dark breakdown of Purphoros, the Bronze Blooded. Hope you're excited to have some sneak attack fun today. In fact, let's go ahead and cover Purphoros. So we're playing, but we're covering Purphoros Bronze Blooded, 5 total mana. Indestructible, Devotion 5 turns into a creature, then other creatures you control have haste, then for a 3 mana activation, you may put a red creature card or an artifact creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Now, one thing that you definitely do want to keep in mind if you're going to be building this deck is that let's say that you get to your opponent's end step, simply just paying that 3 mana to drop a creature in, you're going to be able to cheat that sacrifice, because since it's already the beginning of the end step, your opponent's end step, you can drop in a few extra creatures before your turn. That way you can just get in a few extra activations. So that's kind of a little tip just to kind of keep in mind if you will be building Purphoros. Now, as far as Purphoros and Ilharg and Atali, what's the difference? To me, when I look at Purphoros is a little bit more of kind of like a sneak attack commander. You're really wanting to kind of just get different value in at different points of the game. You're not trying to just swing wide every single turn. There's probably going to be a choke point or a bottleneck where you're trying to dump a lot of creatures on the battlefield to hopefully assemble some sort of alpha strike. So just kind of think of Purphoros as not necessarily the same as Atali or Ilharg, but kind of more of a calculated, let's dump these creatures on the battlefield. Hopefully that'll help us win the game. But let's jump into the breakdown of the commander. So as far as the leeway in your Purphoros building, you're going to have a lot of room for creativity. Now, you do need to incorporate a lot of artifact and red creatures to take advantage of Purphoros' enter the battlefield ability, but you're going to have a lot of freedom for whatever sort of creativity that you may want to do. If you want to go heavy artifacts, if you want to go heavy tokens, if you just want to go heavy beaters, whatever that may be, you will have at the core of the deck, it's going to be cheating creatures into play, but you're going to have a lot of room for creativity as far as whatever sort of creature you want. Now, as far as the timing of Purphoros, you can definitely make this an early game commander, get it out as quickly as possible. It does have indestructible, so you can basically just get it out there and not worry about it. But to me, I feel like the best timing for this commander is going to be mid to late game. Typically, you want to have, when you're getting down Purphoros, you want to have your hand fully stocked, you want to have a lot of mana on the battlefield. That way you can become a huge problem for your opponent. It's going to be hard for you to become a major threat from your opponent if you're just rolling out Purphoros and you're just dumping your hand out and getting creatures out. You can put some pressure on them, but if you transition that to the late game or the mid game, simply just having Purphoros out there and having a ton of mana available to you, it's going to be really hard for your opponents to kind of stop your game plan. Now, as far as the support packages you're going to run for Purphoros, it's going to be a high support package. You're going to want to run a lot of creatures that enter the battlefield cheaply for this to get that activation going. Now, you don't necessarily need a lot of cards that interact with Purphoros. It's just you're going to get a lot of overlapping value if you incorporate into your deck building, different things like Mimic Vat, Panharmonicon. There's just going to be a lot of slots that are going to go towards stuff entering the battlefield or putting creatures into play. So you're not necessarily constrained like Hapacha, where you just have to deal only with -1/-1 counters. With Purphoros, you're really going to be open as far as whatever sort of support package you want. But at the end of the day, you're going to run a high volume of the deck. Will be dedicated to Purphoros. So now that we've kind of got the rating out of the way, let's go and jump into some of the stuff that you can do. These are going to be the basics of any Purphoros deck that you're going to be building. That's going to be Sneak Attack, Mimic Vat, and Feldon of the Third Path. These are going to keep the exact same game plan options that you're trying to do. Let's say that we get Purphoros out, something happens to it, the commander tax gets kind of jacked up there. These are going to be ways that we can kind of rebound and still keep with that same game plan. This is a high support deck. You want to be able to kind of support the core of the deck, and these are ways that you can certainly do that. Mimic Vat is such a great option for this deck because you have to sacrifice that creature, then you're going to have the option of just bringing it back turn after turn, which is a really good thing. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Ilharg and Atali, these are going to be ways that you can just become a nuisance for your opponent. No matter what sort of, if it's heavy artifact and, big red, goblins, whatever it is, these are going to make sure that your game plan keeps going if something does end up happening to Purphoros, which you want to incorporate some sort of backup plan. So some of the other really good utility stuff for the deck, Lifeline, this is going to make sure that you can kind of create this weird little loop of bringing creatures in and out of the graveyard, or making sure that your sacrifice doesn't just keep it into the graveyard. Still, one of the main things you want to keep in mind with Purphoros, it says artifacts or red creatures. If you just still have to jam Sneak Attack Eldrazi, Painter Servant will be one of your best friends. All cards that are on the battlefield, spells, and permanents are the chosen color once it enters the battlefield. So So grab yourself Painter's Servant, name red, everything in your deck is red, so you can just dump any sort of red creatures out of your hand, and that will make Purphoros happy and you happy as you slam down Eldrazi. Don't do that, don't do it. The other thing is Sundial of the Infinite. Let's say we do get to our end step and that sacrifice trigger happens. Basically just activate Sundial of the Infinite. This is going to be a low investment artifact for the deck. It's really going to have a lot of high impact too. You can get this down. Once you go to sacrifice that creature, keep it on the battlefield, then you're good to go. And your opponents will be like, wow, that's really cool. Sundial, keeping the creatures out there. Another good thing that you can kind of dodge the sacrifice effect is going to be Conjurer's Closet. So once you get to your end step, so we have the Purphoros trigger that goes on the stack, then you have the Conjurer's Closet trigger. Put the Purphoros trigger on the stack first, then put Conjurer's Closet trigger on the stack. You're going to exile that creature, blink it, and then it's a brand new creature according to the game, so you're not going to have to sacrifice it. So Conjurer's Closet is a wonderful way, especially if you're running Enter the Battlefield creatures. Conjurer's Closet is a good way to get that extra value and at the same time make sure that your creatures stay on the battlefield. But you do have to stack those triggers correctly, because if you target your creature and then you sacrifice them, you're going to be a little sad Magic player, and that's not going to be a lot of fun. Now, one of the really good ways that you can kind of amplify your Purphoros deck is running a lot of copy effects. That's going to be Minion Reflector, Mirrorworks. This cares about artifact creatures. You can totally build a Mirrorworks deck with Purphoros and just pay that 2 mana to make extra copies of it. Oh, it's one of the best things you can do in Magic. Minion Reflector is going to be a little more of a universal thing. You're going to be sacrificing those creatures anyway, and there's going to be high impact creatures too. So with Minion Reflector, that 2 mana is really going to allow you to kind of build up a nice board state or get some nice Enter the Battlefield effects. And then of course Panharmonicon. If you're incorporating those Enter the Battlefield effects like I mentioned, Panharmonicon is going to double those up. Let's say you're using Conjurer's Closet. Oh, Conjurer's Closet and Panharmonicon. That's, if you're new to Magic, buy those 2 cards because you're going to use them a lot. They're very good. Some other ways that you can kind of copy the creatures entering the battlefield: Flame Shadow Conjuring. That's going to give you that nice little token effect. And then Mirror March. There's a lot of times Mirror March whiffs. You're going to miss that first flip, but for the other times, there's a couple times where you hit 4 or 5 coin flips in a row. There's no better feel. It's like hitting the blue star in Mario. It's just one of those Mirror March. If you have it go on, if you get all those coin flips to go in a row, it is a very good feeling. It's like Blue Star and getting like the Mario, like all indestructible mushroom all in one. It just feels really good. Some of the other ways that you can really kind of amplify your Purphoros deck is when you enter the battlefield. Yeah, Mirror March, man. There's one time where I was playing it in Standard and I got like 6, I can't remember. I think, the Enrace Forerunners, 6 of those on the battlefield. And that's some good Magic. So just imagine, getting 6 Worm Coils on the battlefield. That's a very good feeling. So one of the other ways you can kind of amplify your Purphoros deck is running some sort of Enter the Battlefield damage effect. That's going to be Warstorm Surge, Pandemonium, Electropotence. These are all ways that you can really kind of make sure that if you're getting down like a 9/9 creature, you can get 9 damage up top. Let's say your board state's cluttered. Either way, these are going to make sure that if you're going for a Purphoros activation, you're getting some sort of damage to attack your opponent's life total. Now, I will mention Pandemonium. Love this card, but Pandemonium applies to everybody at the table. So if you're going to be able to be building a Pandemonium Purphoros deck, you definitely need to keep in mind that with Pandemonium, that they can target your creatures. Now, thankfully, you have an indestructible commander in Purphoros, so it's not really going to matter. But if you have any sort of utility creatures out on the battlefield, you do want to keep in mind that Pandemonium, if your opponent casts a creature, they can target them. But yeah, if you're playing mono red Enter the Battlefield damage, toss Pandemonium in there. It's a very nice effect for the deck. Now, some other good things: Goblin Bombardment, Impact Tremors. Goblin Bombardment, kind of low investment. Let's say that you don't have Conjurer's Closet or Sundial to stop the turn. At the end of your turn, you might as well just run some sort of sack outlet to deal 1 damage up top instead of having to sacrifice that creature. It's just, if you want to incorporate it, you can. And of course, Impact Tremors. This is one of those things where if you get it down early game, if you have it in your opening hand, awesome. If you get it late game, it's a little clunky, depending if you have a token build, but it's still going to be some really nice options for you to generate a ton of damage as the game wears on. Now, let's talk about the creatures that you can dump onto the battlefield of Purphoros. Let's talk about the big artifacts. These are some of the best value artifacts you can drop in. That's going to be Wormcoil Engine, Mirror Battlesphere, and Ancient Stone Idol. These are going to give you some sort of incremental value after they leave the battlefield. So we get Worm Coil down, you have to sacrifice it at the end step, you're going to get 2 more tokens on the battlefield. Mirror Battlefield is going to enter with those 4 mirror tokens, and then Ancient Stone Idol is going to be a wonderful beater for the deck. It's going to be able to swing in. It has Trample, it's a 12/12, so you're looking to get in for a really good chunk of damage with that, and then whenever it dies, you get a 6/12 Construct artifact token with Trample. So, like I mentioned earlier, let's say you have Mirror Works on the battlefield, you drop an Ancient Stone Idol, pay 2 mana to make a copy of it, then you get those extra tokens. There's a lot of different ways that with this Purphoros deck that you can deal a lot of damage and end up with a very good board state. And cards like these that have some extra tokens that tag along are definitely one of the best ways to go for. And of course, if you'd run the Colossus for the deck, Darksteel and Blightsteel, these are good options to where, you know, let's say you're playing multiplayer and there's one opponent that doesn't really have a board state, you can just drop in Blightsteel and kind of go for a one shot. The good thing about these Blightsteel, at least these Colossus, is that they have a shuffle effect, so they're going to get shuffled back in the graveyard. So if you don't have any way to kind of keep them on the battlefield, you can sacrifice, or you will sacrifice them at the end step, and then they get shuffled back in, so you can potentially draw back into them. So you can hit somebody with Trample and Infect damage. So, but having that Trample on that 11/11 ability, a lot of players can't really survive something like that, or at least it's going to be a really big hit, and it's going to be hard to kind of rebound from that, and which is a pretty good thing. Outside of the kind of big beater artifacts, you've got some kind of utility artifacts that really allow you to kind of control the board state. I mean, and then with Meteor Golem, you don't even have to swing in with it. Let's just say on your opponent's turn, you just flash in a Meteor Golem during their upkeep to take care of a Planeswalker that's about to ultimate. Or let's say they're swinging in for an Alpha Swing. You just drop in a quick little duplicate. Sundering Titan's going to blow up a lot of lands. You're going to be playing mono red with Purphoros. Sundering Titan's going to make sure that everybody has a very big headache as you blow up a lot of their lands. So whatever sort of, utility package you want to run as far as removal goes, you're going to be pretty open, because the cool thing about Purphoros is you don't necessarily have to run just aggro creatures or smash. You can definitely use Purphoros as kind of a little of a controlling aspect, and that's what makes it so much fun and a little bit more different than Atali and Ilharg. You also have stuff like Combustible Gearhulk, Steel Hellkite, Sandstone Oracle. You're going to be able to generate value. You're going to be able to kind of go for mass board wipes, whatever that may be. You're going to have some sort of controlling effect on the board state, or at least some sort of way to get a few extra cards into your hand, which is going to be pretty nice. Now, moving on to the red creatures that you want to drop in, you can almost build like this mono red dragon tribal with Purphoros. I mean, there's a lot of dragons that can have enter the battlefield effects. There's a lot of dragons that have damage effects, and the fact that Purphoros gives them haste, that is such a good option. So you've got Spawn, that's going to deal damage equal to the number of mountains you control. We've got Bogarden, 5 damage divided how you want. Balefire Dragon, which is going to act as kind of like a board wipe dragon. Whatever sort of dragon package you want to run, you could simply just run these 3 as utility creatures, and you would be good to go. But if you really want to amplify the dragon tribal, Purphoros is really going to enable that. And in fact, I'll probably end up building a dragon tribal version of Purphoros, simply because it just looks so much fun. Some other good stuff that you can kind of drop in, you've got Ingrass Marauders. If a source you control will deal damage to a player, it deals double. This is, like I mentioned, there's a lot of timing effect with Purphoros. Let's say we are swinging in with 3 dragons. Your opponent's like, well, I can take, 15 damage or something like that. Drop an Ingrass Marauder before you get a combat damage. There you go. You're going to double up the damage. Or simply just using Inferno Titan. It's going to get in. It's going to have haste, deal that 3 damage. Whatever that may be, you're going to be able to drop it in and make your opponent's game pretty hard to kind of fight through. Now, some of the good utility red creatures that you can use, I love all of these steal stuff from your opponent. You've got Molten Primordial and Zealous Conscripts. These are going to steal your opponent's creatures. You can drop them in during your main phase, steal them, and then swing in and attack with them. There's no better feeling than grabbing one of your opponent's bigger creatures and then hitting them in the face with it. And of course, Mindclaw Shaman. This is another great example of, dropping this in during your opponent's turn. You get to cast an instant or sorcery from that player's hand. Now, this is situational, but I want to talk about how good Mindclaw Shaman is in a deck like this. So let's say as the game wears on, your opponent's been holding on to 2 or 3 cards in their hand. Simply just dropping this in is really going to disrupt their game plan. One time with Mindclaw Shaman, I was playing Mindclaw and Grinzo, and I was playing against Riku, and I just fired off a Mindclaw Shaman real quick, and I hit the, there's a blue spell that allows you to take 2 extra turns. And so, I mean, there's you're playing Commander. There's a lot of good stuff in your opponent's hands, and Mind Claw Shaman is going to make sure that you get it. And really what it does is it just disrupts their flow of the game, and it makes it hard for them to kind of build up any sort of consistent game plan, which is pretty much what you want to be doing with this deck. Some other good stuff you can drop in: Avatar of Slaughter. That's going to give your creatures double strike. Like I mentioned earlier, let's say you swing in, and your opponent's going to take that attack, drop it in for double strike to get some extra damage, or let's say you have Angrass Marauders in your hand. That's going to be double strike and double damage. So for 6 mana, that's a pretty good effect. And then cards like Thundermare, it's going to enter the battlefield, tap all of the creatures. You do want to set this up to where you get Thundermare down first. That's going to tap all of the creatures, tap your opponent's creatures down, then kind of deploy your creatures out. Because if you run your creatures out and you get out Thundermare, you're just going to have a 5/5 horse. And, you know, a 5/5 horse is nice, but it's not going to close the game out. So make sure you sequence it correctly, because Thundermare can be a very good card in a deck like this. And of course, outside of, you know, just interacting with the battle effects, different things like that, just generating card advantage. Ox, Cavalier, Book Devourer. You just want to be able to make sure you can keep your hand flowing with this game. And these are going to be some wonderful options to make sure you can get some good card advantage. Now, one of the best ways to take a deck like this is running some sort of token package, because it is always nice to get in for 5, 6, 7, 8 chunks of damage, but you want to have something stick around if you have to sacrifice that creature. Siege Commander, Chancellor, and Goblin Marshal, these are all wonderful things you can get down for 3 mana, get those tokens on the battlefield, and then just kind of rebound from there. Especially if you have Mimic Vat or something, you're definitely going to be good to go. Rekindling Phoenix and Rapacious One, these are other good options that you can do to kind of get some tokens going. And with Rekindling Phoenix, this is one of those things that it's not necessarily going to be a ton of tokens, but one of the things that you can do is simply just get it down, get that token happening. It's going to create that value and kind of keep that creature back on the battlefield, which is really pretty much what you want to do. And last but not least, one of the things that you do want to definitely incorporate into your deck is a ton of ramp. You want to get to the point where you have access to a ton of mana and just run a ton of colorless mana, because that's really going to allow you with Purphoros to make sure you can get those activations going and basically rebound. You know, one of the cool things about playing a deck like this is, let's say that they do kind of target Purphoros, they keep Purphoros off the battlefield. If you have enough ramp in your deck, eventually you get to this point to where you can just start hard casting some of these threats. And that's one of the best feelings in the world, because you don't have to have your commander out there. Now, Purphoros does help you win the game, but simply just getting to the point where you have a ton of mana on the battlefield, that's going to be really good. And of course, some sort of card advantage. You need to run Wheel of Fortune, Magus of the Wheel. You want to be able to quickly dump your hand out and refuel with something like, there's no better feeling than Wheel of Fortune. Let's say you start your early game out, get a lot of mana rocks out there, Wheel of Fortune, draw 7 more cards, then you're going to be refueled and ready to go. One of the ways you want to really approach this deck is playing it aggressively. And with Wheel of Fortune, let's say you have a good utility card in your hand, but you don't have a good spot to drop it. Just go for that Wheel of Fortune, draw 7 more cards, and start dumping stuff onto the battlefield. You'll be in a pretty good spot to go. But that's going to be it for the deck tech, or at least the kind of mad breakdown of Purphoros. Can't wait to build it. I've already got 2 or 3 different ideas to go for. And if there's something that I didn't cover in this video, I always like to cover as much as I can, but if we cover every single aspect of the deck that you can do, we're going to be here for a long time. So if there's something that you're really excited about in your Purphoros deck, hop in the comments, let me know. People tend to treat these videos as a little bit of a starting point for building their deck, and I will see you in the next video. All right, bye.